I think it's important to make sure that these areas are safer for the community, to make sure that they feel if they're out walking or riding, they can do that in the full knowledge that their movements are being patrolled. I'm really pleased this morning to have with me my former colleague and a very good friend in the Minister for Home Affairs in Peter Dutton.
Great to be here this morning. Mayor Boyd, thank you very much for being along here.
It's July 2018, 12 days out from a crucial by-election for the seat of Braddon in northern Tasmania.
This is an almost $200,000 investment into this electorate. People in the local community here will be safer because of it.
In the coastal city of Burnie, Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton and the local Liberal candidate announced 2 community safety grants to upgrade security cameras.
CCTV in major population centres are a good thing for deterrence of crime, but I don't think crime in this part of the world would rate very high.
2 months earlier, the Labor MP for this marginal seat, Justine Kay, had been forced out of Parliament over her dual citizenship. Malcolm Turnbull's coalition government was clinging to a 1-seat majority on the floor of Parliament.
The by-election was an election of just intense national focus. It's become much more marginal over the last 20 years. A lot of very quick political decisions are made and funding's announced. You see something that's tangible that can be built that you can cut a ribbon to open with.
The beauty of this money is that it comes from the proceeds of crime fund, that is, money that we've taken off criminals.
These election promises would be paid for by the $180 million Safer Communities program, controlled by the Home Affairs Minister.
And the way that this works is that the money is then very carefully allocated, and trying to reduce crime, prevent crime, it's a good idea. The money is allocated where it is most needed to the most deserving program, which has got the greatest prospects of success.
Burnie Council would receive $60,000 to install 10 new security cameras. Nearby Waratah Wynyard Council was promised $134,000 for new CCTV.
He made the announcement, not with the local member, who happened to be a Labor Party person, but rather with the local Liberal Party candidate for the seat in the next election.
The Safer Communities Fund is supposed to be a competitive and merit-based scheme. But at the time of the grant announcement, these Tasmanian councils hadn't yet applied for these grants. They couldn't. 7:30 can reveal the grant guidelines wouldn't be written for almost 2 weeks.
Waratah Wynyard at that time, I recall, had different priorities. They had a big plan to redevelop their waterfront. I'd never heard anything about CCTVs at all.
Peter Dutton took a hands-on approach when awarding these Safer Communities grants. In Braddon, the Home Affairs Minister insisted the projects were worthy of the funding they received. Confidential ministerial briefings obtained by 7:30 through Freedom of Information laws reveal Peter Dutton went against some of his department's recommendations, shifting millions of dollars from some highly rated projects and diverting those funds to other community groups.
The Minister, just as an exercise of discretion, reduced the amount payable to many of the most highly qualified funds, the people, places that needed it the most.
6 months after publicly announcing the Tasmanian projects, Peter Dutton received a formal briefing from his department. It had assessed hundreds of applications from councils and community groups across the country that wanted funding for other safety projects. He was provided with a list of 70 projects recommended as meeting the greatest need. Peter Dutton cut funding to 19 local councils on this list.
We can actually see the Minister signing off and reassessing projects under his own criteria, which is not explained. It's just quite incredible because it does get us into the Minister's room for a moment.
Among the 19 projects that had their funding reduced was the city of Rockingham, south of Perth. Its funding for security cameras was cut from more than $960,000 to $500,000. In Armidale, New South Wales, funding for safety lights in a crime hotspot was slashed from more than $945,000 to $450,000.
It could be actually quite wasteful to part fund an appropriate project. It just might mean that you don't do it properly, or you may not be able to do it at all.
At the same time, Home Affairs bureaucrats gave the minister another list. These safety projects were considered eligible for funding but scored lower when assessed the department's criteria. They were ranked from highest to lowest in terms of merit and value for money. Minister Dutton chose not to follow the department's merit-based ranking, instead creating his own list of 53 grant recipients. He was warned by the department that by doing this, he may be criticised either in the media or by the Australian National Audit Office. 730's analysis of the grant funding shows 38 out of 53 grants were made to coalition electorates. 10 grants went to marginal Labor or independent seats, 5 went to safe Labor seats. In total, more than 90% of all the grants went to coalition electorates or marginal Labor or independent seats. The minister was also warned specifically against funding the Tasmanian Council projects that he'd announced days out from the Braddon by-election. The department argued the projects did not represent value for money. As Peter Dutton explains in his handwritten note, he believed the funding was warranted and would assist with the safety of those communities.
Mr Dutton reallocated the funds to those 2 local councils, even though they did not meet the assessment criteria. He's overridden the assessment, taken money away from those people who truly needed it, and awarded it where the money was not going to be used for its full value.
In a statement, Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton told 730 the suggestion the government had done anything other than support worthy projects was nonsense. He said he was proud of the support provided to various organisations which he said had made Australia a safer place. The Home Affairs Minister can also use the proceeds of crime to award one-off grants to other organisations outside the Safer Communities program. 730 has identified an almost $900,000 grant made to the National Retail Association.
This grant was really about going across the country and ensuring that retail workers and stores within retail centres were educated about any risks or what they should do in the event of a terrorist attack.
The CEO of the association, which represents retailers and fast food businesses, says her organisation had been lobbying various levels of government for some time.
We developed a program which meant that they had physical materials that could be given out in stores and also just a whole raft of digital materials that could be used for years to come. And ultimately, yes, we were awarded it via the Minister's Office.
In September 2018, Peter Dutton told his department he wanted to consider and cost the association's proposal. The organisation has been a donor to both major parties. 730 can reveal the association made a $1,500 donation to the Queensland LNP during a function at a Brisbane hotel in November 2018. That donation was for the purpose of supporting Peter Dutton, who was a guest at the private function.
The purpose of that particular event was to ensure that our membership were able to have access and speak, with the minister about things that were happening in their businesses.
Was the purpose of the donation in any way related to Mr Dutton's decision to award the grant, do you think?
To be perfectly honest with you, I was not aware that he was even considering the grant at that point in time.
Don't you think that that gives rise to a perceived conflict of interest?
Look, this simply isn't just about a question like that. What this is actually about is the fact that we have a need from our membership around the safety of their workers.
8 days after the donation was made, the Minister's Office asked his department to fast-track the grant. The grant was later assessed by the department, which found it represented value for money and recommended the minister fund the retail safety project.
When the minister is exercising discretion to award a very large sum of money to a party which only 1 week before had made a donation for his ultimate benefit, really, there's obvious room to infer a conflict.
The Home Affairs Minister told 730 that it was a baseless suggestion that he would be influenced by a lawful donation to the LNP and that it was false and highly defamatory. Jeffrey Watson says there are questions over whether Mr Dutton's consideration of grant funding after the political donation to the LNP could be considered a breach of the Prime Minister's standards for his ministers.
But of course he may have a good explanation for that. He should give it.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.